This is Quarantine Chronicles, episode 17, brought to you all the way from Los Angeles, California. I am your host, Kevin. To my virtual left, we have Jason.
Hello.
To my virtual right, we have Angel.
Good morning. If you're listening to in the morning. Otherwise, just hello.
What about a good evening or a good afternoon?
Oh, damn, you're right. Good evening, good afternoon, and good night.
What if it's like at the cusp of midnight and you have to say like good morrow?
Is that what you say?
I don't know. I don't know. It just sounded right.
But I'm just from Truman
Show.
Show.
Good morrow is?
No.
Yeah, it's like I wasn't in that.
He just says like the good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Good movie.
Do we have any numbers on when people listen to the podcast?
Not at my fingertips, but I could probably dig around the various Apple data we have and Spotify data and see. I can tell you we're listened to in like 84 countries.
Okay, yeah, that's cool.
Or something crazy like that. So, yeah.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, no, you did, because I tweeted it from the Random Towns account a year ago.
You act like he looks at that account.
Yeah, I mean, like, come on. You guys don't pay attention to your own podcast account that you don't have any control over? Come on.
I mean, I do every now and then.
You should know by now what I do know and not know.
I know. I'm double-checking that number real quick.
84 countries.
Nope, I got that totally wrong. 19 countries.
How did you?
I don't know where 84 came from, unless it's this year, which
I went from going like, I am so humble to only 19? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
That's like almost 4.5 times the amount of countries.
Yeah, look at that live fact check I just did. Together, it's 11,637 miles of mind expanding listening is what the little image says from Spotify a year ago. From Belgium to New Zealand.
Damn.
Okay, yeah, I would assume that a lot of English-speaking countries would listen to us. Who else would theoretically listen to us?
Someone in a country where they don't speak English.
Yeah, but why would they listen to us?
That's a good question. Because we're wonderful. It's because we're really great. That's why.
Oh man, don't no. We are the worst. I'm just talking about Americans in general.
Yeah.
So before we get into the usual stuff, we have our bi-weekly COVID. What did I call this segment? The bi-weekly SoCal COVID update. Yeah, and then it's preceded by a jingle of yours, Jason.
And every time it changes. COVID. That's all I got.
All right. Well, that sounds like somebody who has COVID trying to bring it out.
They're getting worse every time.
So since the last episode of QC, I believe we were about to end our stay-at-home orders. They were extended. So stay-at-home orders for all of SoCal, right? The exact same places they've...
I believe so. They might have actually... Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, so stay-at-home orders have been extended. And then on top of that, a new strain of coronavirus has been found here in Los Angeles. Brought all the way from the UK, because of course, we can't get away from those pesky Brits. You know, we secede from them, and then they just find a way to bring us back down to their level. I'm kidding. If anybody from the UK is listening to this,
it's our second most. It's the country with the second biggest audience for us.
I am so sorry.
Because they speak English there, so we do.
No,
they put
we
extra
speak
vowels,
American.
Or we take extra vowels out.
Yeah, that's too much work for us.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one extra letter is too much work for us.
It really is.
Aside from that...
Yeah, it really bothers me whenever I see color versus color.
Color?
Get rid of the U.
Color?
Color, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's still pronounced color, though. Or maybe it isn't, I don't know.
Yeah. Aside from that, I think all of America is having this problem. We have a bunch of vaccines that seem to be going to waste because we have no proper infrastructure on how to distribute them.
Correct.
Yeah, so this podcast is just going to be part of our lives now.
Yep. We're going to eventually have to rename it or something.
Oh, man.
Well, I mean, after COVID. Well, I guess we won't have to rename it, to your point, because COVID.
Yeah, exactly.
Is forever and always.
And I guess with that, we could start the episode. And what do we
What a
have
way
on the
to
docket?
begin. COVID is forever and always. So let's talk media.
Yeah, let's talk media. The only thing that is keeping us sane during these stay-at-home times, the after times, is what I like to go. You know, there's 2 points in your life: after COVID and before COVID. The before times and the after times. We're in the after times. We're gonna be in the after times for a while too.
Well into the after times.
Yeah. All right. Angel, talk to us about Cobra Kai.
I'm Angel. Yeah. So Cobra Kai. What a interesting journey it was for me to even to start watching the show, because obviously, like, it's been in the, I don't even know what to call it,
zeitgeist,
the pop culture, zeitgeist, like, for a good while now. I feel like it's one of those. It's another show that like everyone's been talking about, like at work, at Twitter, like everyone. It just feels like, oh, have you seen Cobra Kai? Like, oh, Cobra Kai is amazing. And I don't know. I typically don't really watch shows when they get a lot of buzz like that. Not like I'm avoiding it because it has that buzz. Like I guess like kind of like Nintendo. Like I'll just watch things like whenever all of a sudden I just feel like it. Like it has nothing to do when the general consensus is. If anything, what would push me to watch something more often than not is when someone I know or like someone directly recommends something to me. That's usually when I'll go and watch it. And at that time, I don't think anyone in our like group, even if they were watching it, didn't directly go like, oh man, you guys should watch Cobra Kai. It was just something that my sister and brother-in-law just decided to watch one night. I remember why. Maybe they were the ones that brought it up, but we were just like, let's just watch something short. And luckily, like every episode is like around 30 minutes. On average, they're less than 30 minutes, but sometimes they'll go over. But yeah, we watched the first season. And I had watched the Karate Kid a couple times before. Like it's a movie I've seen. It just pops up on TV. I know I've seen it on my own. I've seen it in big groups. So it was still pretty fresh in my head. Yeah, I really like the show. I can see why a lot of people are recommending it. Honestly, I think you will like the show more if it's been a little while longer since you've seen the movie. I feel like because we saw the movie yesterday night as of this recording, actually, there were some things, like specifically like the very, very ending of the movie that kind of made me go like, wait, the Johnny Daniel relationship, it seems like it was kind of like fixed in a way. You know, he got the respect at the end of the tournament, but then the whole show kind of revolves around the fact that they really hate each other. So it kind of makes me wonder, like, what happened? Like, I want to watch part 2, see maybe it kind of like has something that happens that developed into more hatred, but for the most part, if ignoring that, it's really great. The people that reprise the role mainly are just like the character of like Johnny, Daniel, and the mom. Basically, the main rival from Cobra Kai, the main character, Daniel, who was like Miyagi's, student, and his mom. Without going into any spoilers, like those are pretty much like the people we focus on. And even though it's called Cobra Kai, it really is a split between Daniel and Johnny. Like it kind of flips back and forth between like what's going on with them. And what makes me really like just appreciate the show is just how well developed these characters are. You almost like when I mean that I feel like this it kind of works better when you watch it further, a little more distance from the movie. Is that as I was watching it, I kind of got this like feeling that the characters were way more developed than they really were in the movie. I guess I don't know, because the show like does a really good job. Just like it does drop a lot of like scenes from the movie, but it drops some in like strategic parts where it just like helps develop its plot. It's almost like I'm not really saying like it doesn't retcon anything, but it shows you just what it wants you to see, and it probably like doesn't show you what it like. Jason can attest to this because he actually watched the movie with me last night as of this recording. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna stop saying as of this recording. People know what I mean when I say yesterday. Like Daniel is like really hot-headed. He almost has like half the things that like I feel like I don't know. Maybe other people just remember it different than I did, but
he's a jerk.
When you're watching the show, yeah, when you're watching the show, like when you're watching the show, like you typically remember like, oh, Daniel's the good guy, Johnny's the bad guy, and then the show definitely hammers home how like how big of a jerk Johnny was, but Johnny. Yeah, I mean, he takes things further than he has to, but it's only because he was already instigated most of the time. Yeah, and it just makes him look that much more evil. But then when you watch the movie, you're like, oh, he was like only half to blame. Like Daniel was probably just as bad. I mean, there was a scene where he like just straight up like hoses him in the bathroom, like unprompted on anything. He could just left it alone, but that led to like the big beating that led Miyagi to finally train him. So, I mean, I guess who knows what would have happened if he didn't do that. I mean, I guess the plot had to happen, but yeah. I mean, besides that, they do a really good job making both characters extremely likable. Like, you really want to root for both of them, but you know, if you do, like, one of them has to lose if the other one is going to win, because they're, you know, they're at odds with each other. And they have, I don't know, and the show, like, you know, I would label it kind of like a comedy drama. Like, it doesn't take itself super seriously, but it does have some pretty heavy moments at times.
Yeah, how's the tone compared to the movie? Because the movie's tone, I felt like, was so, I don't know. Like, is it, when you went back and watched the movie yesterday, did it match the tone of what you're watching in Cobra Kai, or did it seem more, like, ridiculous? I don't know, like the first third of Karate Kid, watching it back yesterday, felt so, like, the dialogue was so stilted and everything was so, like, overly 80s. Like, did they keep that vibe, or did they kind of, like, not grow it up a bit, but modernize it a bit?
It's definitely way more modernized. It feels more like your typical, I guess, drama. I don't know. I want to compare it. Let's see, what the show I could compare it to? This is kind of like an extreme comparison, but I want to compare it in tone to, like, Breaking Bad.
What?
Because Breaking Bad, like, and I'm strictly talking tone here, because it talks about, like, Breaking Bad it's pretty funny at times. It has, like, some comedic moments. In fact, like, I don't know, some of the memorable times are just comedic moments, mainly with Jesse. Only because I couldn't think of another example off the top of my head. Like, because any other show I could think of is, like, full comedy.
Well, I was going to guess, like, really a CW DC Universe show, or, like, Chuck or something like that.
Those, so
like,
I wouldn't know.
That's what I would assume they were going with.
Okay.
Those are, like, super teen dramas, though.
Chuck isn't so much, but in terms of the, like, lighter fare, but still actiony, but still has some heart. Or are you saying it's really that heavy?
No, because, like, it leans more on, it's like a lighter version of Breaking Bad. I don't know. Breaking Bad's like a bad comparison, but it's like the only one that isn't like a full comedy that I could think of. I guess the only other thing I could say, it's like, if you take, like, oh man, you can't even really use those shows, because I was gonna say, like, you know, Parks and Rec or The Office, or, I mean, those are just straight up like sitcoms. I don't know. It's,
my gut feeling is I'm gonna watch it and think of Chuck.
It's much better than.
That's my gut feeling. I feel like it's gonna remind me of Chuck, just based on what you're describing. But
Chuck is way more. So I haven't seen the show. I saw the first Karate Kid a long time ago, and then, but I have heard, I've seen the discourse online about what the show's like. This Chuck is a more overt comedy than this.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, maybe toned down the comedy. There's definitely more, like, I mean, even just knowing the history of the first movie, like, if you know the plot of the movie and you didn't watch it, but you still watch the show, I think you would still really enjoy it. Just because, like, it's very kind of like, I don't know, obviously, like, many people probably haven't seen this, but kind of like Space Brothers. That show, you know, it's about, like, it mainly focuses around, like, older people and, like, their ordeals and their day-to-day life. This one kind of does that too, and, like, when it does sprinkle some comedy in there, for the most part, it's just, like, kind of like a nice nostalgia trip, and just how, I guess, these characters are, because, I mean, it's really cool just seeing them 30 years later and how they're dealing with, you know, be it their successes or their failures, and the callbacks are just done in a really nice, like, sometimes, like, you know, it could feel like, oh, they're practically playing most of the first movie to you, because, I mean, they do use a lot of clips from the first movie, but everything else, like, I don't know, the references are either super subtle or kind of in your face, but it's really, I don't know, it's all done in a great way. You could tell, like, the writing team or whoever, like, made this, like, really wanted to modernize the plot, like, because everything feels well paced. Actually, that's a really great thing to say. It's really well paced. The action in the earlier episodes, specifically, like, the first one, kind of feel a little TMNT 2, and I mean, like, the second live action Ninja Turtle movie, the very first one, or, you know, like, it just feels like overly choreographed. Like, it doesn't really feel like sometimes like they're hitting each other. But that's only an issue that's really a thing in the very first few episodes. After that, like, the fighting becomes much, much better. But I don't know, it's just the pacing, I guess the lightheartedness at times, and even the more serious parts. Like, anytime, like, things are going well, they kind of turn it on its head and just like, oh man, they were making so much progress and now this happens. Or like, oh, they were so close to, like, seeing through it. Like, I mean, a lot of it is, like, some of it can be predictable, but that, I feel, isn't a knock on it, because you want to see how they get to that point. It's more about, the journey than the destination. You know that there's going to be, like, this tournament at the end. Like, after watching the first episode, or maybe the first two, I'm sure you'll be able to pick out, like, oh, okay, clearly this person's going to be involved with this person, this is going to be involved with that person. But that doesn't take away any of the enjoyment from it. Like, I'm definitely really looking forward to the next seasons, especially with how, like, I just watched the first 2 episodes of the second season, and, like, the plot is, like, it's progressing along nicely. Like, the first season ends in a pretty satisfying way. It does end in a cliffhanger, obviously, but I think, like, even the first season just has, like, a nice little story to it. And especially, I mean, if you enjoyed the first, and if you enjoyed The Karate Kid, like, I think it'll make you like the movie, and it kind of elevates both. Like, the show gets better if you enjoyed the movie, and if you enjoyed the show, you actually end up enjoying the movie more. Like, it's kind of cool how that happens. Like, I was mentioning how, cause like the movie, like, definitely feels like a product of its time. Like, I wouldn't say it definitely hasn't aged perfectly, but I feel like after watching the show, it made me a bigger fan of the movie. So I think, like, this show definitely helped the movie.
The key question, does the Norwalk golf and stuff show up in the show? The golf and stuff in your part of the world, is that in the show, or is it only in the movie? It's still there.
I think it does. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't, but there is a golf date at some point. But I don't remember, because I think, I don't remember if that was exactly a golf and stuff or something. But there is a golfing place at some point. It could be. But yeah, definitely it's worth checking out. I recommend it, especially because I definitely prefer the shorter shows right now. I don't know if it's just because of time or something, but if something is like 45 minutes long, and a lot of these shows that do end up having 45-minute long episodes, like Netflix or any of these things, because this is on Netflix, they're not like set in stone, always going to be 45 minutes. Sometimes they go to 50, sometimes they're a little longer. It's like you're watching a little movie every time, kind of like Breaking Bad. And I can't really do those kinds of shows that often. It almost feels too, like, it feels exhausting. I don't know. To me, it's just like after an episode or two, I'm just kind of like exhausted. But because it's so bite-sized and just well-paced, it doesn't feel like you watch a 30-minute episode. Like, you feel really satisfied, and it just goes by quickly, and you're like, oh, I could still watch another. I don't know. It's one of those like shows that's really easy to binge, which is always great. Kind of like the Harley Quinn show, which I also recommend. That's a really easy show to binge. But yeah, check it out. Also check out, it's gonna give another shout out to the Jackie Chan version.
Yep, I was about to ask.
Great, in my opinion. Like, that one, if I were to just like, if someone asked me like, oh, which of the 2 Karate Kid films is your preferred go-to version, I would definitely say the Jackie Chan version. I mean, outside of just obviously having like a big bias towards Jackie Chan, I don't know. I just think everything is paced and just, I don't know, just kind of flows better, in my opinion, than the original. But I don't know, they're both good in their own way. Even Jaden Smith, I feel he did a good job in that film.
Would you say the pace flows as good as Jaden's rap? Sorry, I can't resist.
Never heard of
yes,
rap,
you have. It's in the credits of that movie. He sings the song at the end of the movie.
I think as soon as the credits begin to roll, I just stop it.
At least I think he's in the. I know he did a song for the movie when he was like 13 or whatever. It's with Bieber.
The nice thing about that movie is, it's like, you don't need to watch. Obviously, you shouldn't have to have watched the original Karate Kid to enjoy the reversion. I mean, the remake, because it's a remake. But if you did watch the remake, they do a lot of like nods to the original movie, but they kind of just like play with the expectations a little, because it's its own thing. But a lot of the beats are the same for the most part. Like, you have, like, if they begin the same way, like both are leaving their home country with friends chasing after them, except one is going on an airplane to a whole other country. They see this girl, boy gets in the way, and there's even like a parallel to the whole Daniel like pouring water into Johnny when he's like, minding his own business. And this one, Jaden drops like a bucket of, I guess, waste or something on the bullies, but the bullies feel a little more, are definitely more antagonistic in this film. So it almost feels more like Jaden is in the right, even though, he shouldn't have had to do that. But yeah, even like the introduction of Miyagi and Jackie Chan is like almost identical. But, at the end of the day, just your preference. I mean, this one's also just a more modernized version. So if you had an issue with the stilted acting in the beginning of the movie or anything like that, then this will be more your taste. But I think it just kind of depends on what you grew up with as well that will impact it.
I will say to your point about shorter...
They're both good. They're both great. I feel like the Jackie Chan one shouldn't be disregarded, I guess is all I'm saying.
I will say to your point about shorter drama episodes, like dramas that have shorter than 45-minute episodes, that is kind of nice. I've been watching A Teacher on Hulu. I'll probably talk about it next episode. But yeah, those are like 22 minutes each. And it's actually really nice. It makes it really digestible. And I mean, for that one, it's really important because the subject line's so heavy. It's about a teacher that has an affair with one of her students, and he's, I think, 17. And so there's a lot of like heaviness to that. But yeah, like the bite size makes it really easy. Just like if you want to binge, you binge. If you're like, all right, I'm good. Like it only takes 20 minutes of your time. Like I'm all for more dramas splitting up into those sort of bite-sized bits. Like it sounds like Cobra Kai does.
So in that case, how's the Queen's Gambit?
Which is the opposite of that in every way. It's like an hour-long thing. But no, it's Queen's Gambit's really good.
But there's like, only like 6 episodes, right?
What?
But there's only like 6 episodes,
There are
7
episodes of the Queen's Gambit. Like it is basically a movie sliced into 7 parts. Like it's the same director for all the episodes. It's, all shot the same way. It's not like a TV show where sometimes they bring in different directors and it has like a slightly different style per episode. It's very much a mini series, which is why it's billed as such. I really liked it. I was surprised by how much I liked it. I mean, I went in pretty blind, and in a way I almost recommend that. So anyone who hasn't seen the Queen's Gambit and just knows, it's about chess, like just go in knowing that and you'll be really surprised. And if you do want to know more, I will keep talking.
No, I won't be.
But, what was that?
Nothing. Well, now I won't be.
Well, yeah, but it was like, it's not like it has like a huge plot twist, but it ends up, well, first of all, just as you watch it, it's like all these, you watching, you're like, oh, okay, this is a little darker than a thing about chess. And you're like, oh, hey, it's that one actor from Maze Runner. Oh, Dudley from Harry Potter is in this? Like, it's just like when you know nothing and you go in, it's really interesting just to see like how you kind of discover things as you go. But the real thing that I discovered was that the show, while about chess and ultimately focuses on chess, is really not about chess. It's about the journey of this character, Beth Harmon. She's this like prodigy at chess. She is an orphan, and you kind of just follow her trials and tribulations, her ups and downs as she sort of navigates the world through her ability to be good at chess. So, like in the very first episode, she put in an orphanage, and one of the other kids, and this orphanage is set in the 50s, and they give the kids tranquilizers, like literally once a day, to keep them calm. And she actually gets addicted to them in the very first episode. And that addiction sort of follows her through her whole life and through the whole series. And it's just, following her, as she starts to hone her skill, following her as she kind of comes out of her shell from being this very shy person, following her as she, like, experiences grief, following her as she finds a new family, following her as she, kind of, like, comes into her own as this really powerful chess player, and how she goes from being this really quiet kid into this, like, kind of snarky, really dominant force in the chess world. And it's just really well done. It's very much like what's the term for it? Prestige TV. Like everything about it, the way it's shot, the way, like the set design, the costume design, like it has some Mad Men vibes because it's set in a similar time frame of like 60s, 50s and 60s. I was really surprised. And, you don't need necessarily to understand chess, because one of the things I think it does really well is it doesn't actually, like, if you know chess, you can follow it and probably be like, oh, that's crazy, they did that move, oh my god. And they did have like expert chess players as consultants, and the actors apparently all actually played the chess games they were doing. They didn't just do the one move and be like, and cut. Like, they actually were playing through chess, using the moves that they were advised to do. But they focus enough on not the chess. Like, even in the chess scenes, they spend more time on the face of the characters, specifically Beth, who's played by, what's her name? She's Anna, like, she was
Taylor
in
Joy.
Yeah, and she was
Alison Robinson?
No, what Kevin said. And they really focus on her face, and she's really good at, like, being compelling in that you see her, like, the gears turning, you see her thinking about what to do, and you can see the second her eyes light up, like she's got the move, or you can see, the opponent's face and how they're kind of reading the situation. And I think that, more than the actual chess pieces moving around, which they literally half the time don't even have in the shot, I think that's kind of what makes it so compelling. It's basically a human drama that just happens to have chess as its like backdrop, but it's really about her.
So you wouldn't say it made you more compelled to try chess?
Not
chess?
Me personally. I know for a lot of people it did, and it's actually kind of they sort of even nod to that in the show because there's like a point where I think
how to play?
No, but I think that, well, sorta. I mean, they show her learning it, but I think there's a point where someone actually says to her, like, you inspired me to start playing chess or something. And that's a whole nother angle of it, is it's kind of on the back. They reference it without going too deep into it, but they do keep sort of focusing around she's this woman in a man's world. Like chess, especially at that point, was this like battle of wits between the USSR and the US, and like for some reason they were channeling who's the smarter like culture through like chess, so it became like this whole thing at that time, like in real life, and they kind of leverage that and then have like on top of that like, oh, and it's a woman, what? But they always just kind of stop at the, oh, it's a woman, what? And then she just kind of makes her way. Like they don't, the focus isn't so much like, you know, how Beth conquers a man's world. It's more how Beth conquers her own demons and does her thing and, you know, makes it to the top and all that. Which very much like Cobra Kai, this thing has a Hollywood ending. So it's very much about the journey she takes in the rise and falls than it is about, you know, is she gonna win or not? Like, there's no real, I mean, she suffers losses, but like she's constantly moving up throughout the series. Well, mostly. So it's just a really good like human drama. It's and honestly, some of the cinematography in it is really cool, and they even have here's something I bet you wouldn't expect. They had a CGI team for this show. So early on, where she kind of like starts to like chess clicks with her is she's hooked on these tranquilizers when she's a kid in an orphanage. And she takes them at night, and then they actually have her imagining chess games on the ceiling. The ceiling's checkerboarded. And they hired a CGI team to have the visions of chess, like, moving around on the ceiling and stuff. And then she, you know, throughout the series, they keep kind of doing that imagery. And, it's surprising to watch a show about chess and then see a, like, 30-person long list of who did the computer animations for the 1950s chess TV show. But, it was really good. And they do a lot of like little subtle like chess imagery throughout. Like sometimes they dress her in a way where she stands out, like, you know, like she looks like a white piece in like a sea of black or like that sort of thing, and like a sea of black pieces or whatever. And it's really well done. They have a lot of like checkerboard sort of imagery, and just in terms of, I started to say like the cinematography, like there's a lot of really cool shots. I was like, wow, that's really well framed. Like, you know, if they need to make it look isolated, they'll like do it in such a way where it's very visually isolating. And it's for a show about chess, it has really insane production values and feels really like top notch. And it's very surprisingly compelling as someone who knows nothing about chess. So that's kind of, I guess, in a nutshell, Queen's Gambit. It's really just like,
a lot. I mean, you hate chess, so the fact that
I don't hate chess. I just never got into chess. There's a difference. But yeah, it is just a really good ride for those 7 episodes. And again, it's really weird to see people from like shows we know or movies we know as kids. Like, I know I already said this, but literally like seeing a guy and being like, where do I know him from? And then being like, oh my god, it's Dudley from like the first 2 Harry Potters. Like, but now he's grown up. Like, that was just kind of a trip too. But
did they replace the actor for Dudley?
Maybe they did. Maybe he's in all of them, actually. I just would only, when I think Dudley, I think him in like the very first Harry Potters where Harry's still at the house and he's being a jerk to Harry. I don't think like later where he's a little more, you know, like the later books where he almost gets some closure. But
does he get any development in the movies? Because I guess I wouldn't know.
I mean,
after
I think
the third.
I'm trying to remember.
I don't think he came out in the last one.
I think in the books at one point they do kind of like a, you know, like one of those sort of like, it's not literal, but one of those sort of things in where it's like the characters that hate each other kind of do that head nod, like, all right, I can respect you. Like, I feel like they do a variant of that in Harry Potter. I don't actually remember.
I think that's him and Draco, not Dudley.
Oh, was it? Oh, maybe. Okay, then I don't know what happened with Dudley, except he now plays chess.
Yeah, because
it has an American accent.
He just straight up like leaves the Dursleys and like they're just afraid of Harry, so they just kind of leave him alone at that point.
Yeah.
They just kind of part their ways, and that's kind of it.
I could have sworn Harry saved him at one point in one of the
in order to the Phoenix, he saves him. But in the 7th movie at the beginning, I believe he sends the Dursleys away for their own safety.
Right. But I think at that point, like, isn't there sort of the little, like, okay, Harry sort of thing?
I don't think so. Well, that was the movie. I can't tell you anything about the books. I only read up to the 6th book, I think.
Really? You didn't just finish at that point? You were so close.
Nah.
Okay.
Or I think I finished with Order of the Phoenix. I think that was the last one. Because that was the longest book, and I said, you know what? I don't need to do this again.
I read every book in one sitting the day it came out, starting with the 4th or 5th. Not by choice per se, but when I enjoyed it, obviously.
Not by choice?
But I enjoyed it, obviously. I'm getting there. I very much enjoyed it, but I was a moderator on Nintendo's official forum, and everyone loved to post in conversations about Star Fox Adventures or whatever, Snape kills Dumbledore. Spoiler. So I had to make sure I didn't, as the guy that had to go remove those, actually get spoiled. So I would just sit and read the book in one day. I very much enjoyed doing it, don't get me wrong. I've never done it with anything since, but it was like the little life hack for those who need to travel back in time and buy a Harry Potter book is the grocery store. Everyone goes at midnight to the bookstore and it sells out, but the grocery store just has them at the checkout counter. And you can just get them, and they have like dozens of copies. So you can just roll in at like 1 p.m. on launch day, and they still have plenty. Damn. So if you go back in time to buy Harry Potter, there you go. There you go. But yeah, it was funny to see like Dudley and Queen's Gambit, or like I think I said like Maze Runner, like one of the kids from Maze Runner was in it, but now grown up, and that was sort of a trip.
There's like 50 kids in the Maze Runner. What?
Yeah, it was the one, the blonde kid. I forgot his name.
That narrows it down.
It does, because there's like half of the dozen are blonde and half, so it's 6 instead of 12. But, honestly, Maze Runner was like a surprisingly decent riff on the dystopian future where only teenagers can save us thing. Like, I actually really enjoyed the first Maze Runner. The later ones less so, but like, I really liked the first one for what it was.
You watched all of them? They made it through?
With a friend of ours. Yes, he wanted to finish the series, so. Actually, no, the last one we were going to see in theaters, but didn't, and I ended up watching it on airplane because I needed my closure, sort of, I guess. I don't know. But yes, I've seen them all.
The sunk cost fallacy, I see.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, what's not a sunk cost? What?
It's like me in the Twilight franchise. I saw, I think, like the first two, and I was like, damn it, I gotta see the other one, though.
And yet, you couldn't get yourself to finish the Harry Potter book, but you did finish Twilight.
But you finished Twilight.
That one requires way more power
investment
than it is to watch.
That's true. It is. Yeah. That's true. It's more active than passive because you have to actually move your eyes across words. Yeah, and process it with your brain. I follow. I do follow, honestly. Yeah, I feel like I never actually saw the Twilights. I think I've seen half of a Twilight. And I never saw Hunger Games, somehow. But I've somehow seen all of Maze Runner. It doesn't make sense. But anyway, that's Queen's Gambit.
I think I saw the first 2 Hunger Games, and then that was it for me.
I
have a huge crush on Jennifer Lawrence, but it was not worth it.
I will say, to your sunk cost fallacy comment, Angel, one show that isn't, I would say, is the Queen's Gambit. There's your pull quote for the back of your non-existent box, Netflix.
Not a sunk cost fallacy.
It's not a sunk cost fallacy. Yeah, it's a good show. It's a good show. I see why it got so much hype. I see why Funko Pops so quickly was like, we need to make Funko thingies of these characters, or the main character.
Funko.
Yeah. Anyway,
what's wrong with Funko? What's wrong with Funko? No, I don't like Funko.
Yeah, their pop vinyl thing is definitely. I mean, it's been, I would say, like oversaturated for a long time. Like, I feel sorry for anyone that collects them, just because it just seems like a fool's errand. Because they just make so many of like every single series. It's like every character that ever existed, even if it was for like one frame, will get a pop figure
or variants of. Like the Queen's Gambit ones are of the same character because she has 3 phases of her life in the series, so they have one for each phase, and they sell them each individually, and she looks the same. They just swap out the clothes on it and the haircut, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, and it feels like for anyone that collects Batman ones, like, God.
Well, the insane one was like with the Yeah, and like the same things like the Mandalorian, like the episode where like Baby Yoda eats the eggs in season 2, like 10 minutes after it's on Disney Plus, Funko's like, here, get this Baby Yoda that eats eggs edition of the Baby Yoda Funko. It's like, what? What are you doing? Granted, I own 2 Funko Pops, excluding the Conan ones I've gotten for free, so I can't diss them too much. But
I am lucky enough to have not owned any, because I mean, also, like I am a more of a on model collector of sorts. And yeah, since if it's not really on model, I typically won't collect it.
That's why I'm okay with the Conan ones, because they are riffs on different pop culture things, but they're all like, that is the on model. There is no like Conan figurine normally.
No, yeah.
So
there are some that like, there's some that like I'm more okay with. I still wouldn't get them, especially because, there's like plenty of other things to collect. Yeah. But especially, I mean, also if you're not a collector of anything, I could see why. I could see the appeal. It's easy. But I will give credit to Funko though for their board game, because I'm guessing we got a board game. It was like a Godzilla board game that my brother and I found out existed, and we got it and we played it, and we're like, whoa, this game is actually like really fun and cool. Like it feels like everything moves the way you would expect a Godzilla board game to work. This is really nicely done. And we thought it was made by Funko, and we're like, what? Like they make product we actually really liked. So
it honestly blows my mind that the bubble for Funko Pops hasn't popped. But like really, like how Beanie Babies came and went already. They killed Kid
Robot basically, but
they killed every other vinyl collectible in the game.
And those I actually did like, because they were like stylized, but they were still kind of on model. So like I did like the Kid Robot. Like I got other Ninja Turtle stuff, but yeah.
And not a Kid Robot, but like Disney tried to do their own version of Funkos at one point. And now they just licensed to Funko. Like they conquered Disney. How is that possible? Like, I don't understand how this bubble hasn't popped. They're so identical looking. Like, there's so many. Like, at some point,
and they keep going.
I don't get it. It's crazy when you go to conventions and the booths are just walls of these. Like, I don't understand.
I mean, the reach is also just amazing. I mean, like literally from like obscure anime to random TV shows, like to everything.
To like, cereal mascots. They have a cereal mascot.
Yeah, exactly.
One.
Like
they have athletes.
I mean, there's obviously someone out there that is actually collecting every Funko, which, props to you, but Jesus, I would love to see what that looks like. But, yeah.
Damn, I'd be afraid to see what that looks like, because I think it's going to be the size of a Beverly Hills mansion, but just all Funkos. Like,
it would have to be like a museum. That much plastic. Like, a whole museum would probably have to fit everything.
But I'm just thinking, like, think of all that plastic. Like, how much that plastic, like, literally just how much plastic is required to be made for that. Like, it's crazy. Like, someone just has, like...
Because they brought vinyl figure collecting to, like, to the mainstream, but they also killed, like, the pioneers that started it, and, like, the more artistic ones. I mean, they're still around. You'll find them more, like, at Designer Con. You probably won't really see a lot of pop vinyls there, except from, like, resale vendors. But... yeah, if anything, I guess it made it even more underground. So I guess if you like that about vinyl collecting, then I guess it made it better. It made you more like, oh yeah, I don't collect pop. I'm more of these things, the OG things.
The hipster of vinyl collecting.
Basically, yeah.
And not a vinyl hipster in the sense of albums. That does exist already too. But I will say, but Funko does some neat stuff though. Like I have a bulb. I mean, again, it's not a model, whatever. But I have a little Bulbasaur, and it's like a felt material. It's like I don't know what to call it. It's like soft.
Pokemon. I'm gonna be so torn if they ever make a chat tot one. If they ever get through like every Pokemon, doesn't seem like they will. I don't know. They seem to be extremely choosy on the freaking like starters and Pikachu.
Yeah,
but.
Honestly, the only reason I even have the Bulbasaur, and like Bulbasaur is not my favorite Pokemon or anything, but like it was right when lockdown was starting, and I was like, the desk I'm using at home is really plain, and I don't want to take things off the shelves because I have those all on shelves with purpose. Like I intentionally put them there, so I don't want to like break the whatever. So I bought the little Bulbasaur, and he's my little desk mate, and he made the jump to my apartment, and still sits on my desk, and the cats like to nibble his plant bud on his back, which is kind of funny.
Do you have any, Kevin? You don't have like a little All Might bobblehead? I mean, pop figure?
No, I don't. I remember when we went to E3 that one time, they were selling Pops on the show floor. I did see a Todoroki one. That looked okay, but I think it's just the eyes that kill it for me.
Yeah.
So what initially, the first one I ever bought, because somehow, because they didn't do the eyes on it, and that was F Society, Mr. Robot. They did the mask. So it's just a mask on a little
the ones that have like a helmet or something on, like typically look better.
Yeah, so because they had the F Societies, also shout out Mr. Robot, best show ever, but, or one of the best shows ever. But yeah, it had like the full face of the F Society mask. So actually it was just like a little stand for the mask. And I was like, well, that's cool. So I got that and then the Bulbasaur and the Conan ones. And the Conan ones, I mean, literally they're handed to me. I don't buy them. The Conan people just give them to me at events. I'm not special. So.
Well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I'm not special. I'm not special. That's my point.
I know. I've also gotten these before, but
yeah. And then you sold it 10 seconds later for $60 instantly from some dude on the street.
That's awesome. Did he offer the $60 or did you tell him $60?
There were like a couple people offering, and he was like the one offering 60. So I'm like, yeah, I'll take you. Go.
It's fine because they literally like. So what for those who
they
don't
run
know,
up to you and they're like holding up the like, hey, I'll sell it for 40, sell it for 50, 60.
Yeah, for those who don't know, every year Conan does a week of shows down at Comic-Con, and they give the audience of each taping one of 4 or 5 how many tapings they do special Conan themed pop vinyl. So it'd be like Conan as Aquaman, Conan as Spider-Man, Conan as a Stormtrooper, and they're only available to those audiences. Plus they make maybe 1,000 extra that they give away online, or that they give away at other events around the convention that Conan's hosting. But basically there's only a couple thousand of them. They're very exclusive. They're like, have a huge profile because they're on TV, and people will just stand in front of the theater, like dozens of people, and just literally wave money at you when you walk out from a taping and be like, we'll take it. It's like, it's crazy. It's like an auction house that you're walking into. So I think I have at least one from every year that Conan's taped down there. Sometimes I've scored a couple from other Conan events. One of them signed by him, which is pretty cool. Got him to sign it. But, yeah. Nice. So that's why people are like throwing money when Angel walked out with his. It's like a whole cottage industry.
Interesting.
Yep.
Angel brought up All Might, so I'll bring this up. I finally got around to seeing the second My Hero Academia movie. This is where Jason tunes out because we're about to talk anime.
Oh, I'm still tuned in. I'm just confused as hell.
Angel, you haven't seen the first 2 movies. You haven't seen the first movie, right?
No, I haven't seen either of the movies, but yeah, I am.
But you're caught up with the anime. Okay, yeah. So I recently caught up to that too.
About time.
So the first My Hero Academia movie, 2 Heroes, that movie took place in between seasons 2 and 3.
Yeah, because I remember one of the seasons ended with like Deku going to All Might, like, oh, we're gonna go to America or something, and then the next season starts after that.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's like literally like a trailer for the movie, which is kind of funny.
Pretty much, yeah. I think it was like a special episode, during season 3. Right. Yeah, it was a special episode during season 3 that took place during season 2, and then the movie takes place in between seasons 2 and 3. And that first movie's okay. The story is fine. There's a very contrived way that they get all the heroes onto that area that they're in. But the final battle is incredibly flashy. It looks really nice. But at the end of the day, there was almost like no stakes involved, obviously, because it takes place in between seasons 2 and 3. So then, with this movie apparently takes place further ahead in the timeline. So not only does it take place after the anime, like where the anime is currently at, but it takes place after the manga. They've said this as much in interviews. Like this is public information.
Yeah, and I guess the show literally starts, like the series begins. I remember with like Deku narrating like, oh, this is a story about how I became the best hero, the number 1 hero in the world. So
yeah, exactly.
I guess he eventually succeeds, but I kind of forget that, and it's like, oh. I have to remind myself, like, oh, that's right. He's going to be okay.
Yeah, he's going to be fine, which always kind of kills tension every now and then.
It kind of sucks. Like, plot armor is a thing, but it sucks when they straight up tell you they have plot armor. At the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah, like before you even know them, but...
I really enjoyed this movie, especially after how okay, I guess, the first movie is. Where should I go with this? As I already said, this movie does take place in the future ahead of the manga. And there are little things in there that you see like, oh, interesting, that hasn't been introduced yet. But it's not big enough so that it spoils whatever is supposed to come. I guess you do see some villains that have been introduced in the manga that you're like, oh, okay, up to this point, they're going to be fine. Which I guess doesn't kill the movie. I guess it kills the series and the manga a little bit more. Then the finale has some very interesting ramifications for the series. That it might have been because of what I had done to prepare myself to watch the movie, but I got very emotional.
To your body for some reason.
But I got very emotional at the final battle. The final battle is animated incredibly well, far much better than anything that the show has done. I would say it rivals or it gets near the heights of like Mob Psycho season 2.
Whoa!
Because Mob Psycho season 2 had some visually stunning stuff.
Dude, the teleporting fight, Jesus! Like just like
how
changes. Oh man,
yeah, exactly.
That's some creative like just fight choreography that I haven't seen anywhere else.
Well, I guess specifically with that fight, I wouldn't talk about that fight specifically because the choreography is there, but the animation looks just as good as Mob has ever looked. I guess I'm comparing this more into that 2-episode arc where Mob goes into like that evil spirit's mind. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah.
And
then
I would compare it to
nuts and that definitely seemed like that episode got like a big budget.
Yeah, exactly. So I would compare the final fight more to that than to the I forget his name, Shimazaki, I think, or Shirazaki, something like that. It looks awesome. But then that brings me to my gripe with both of these movies, which they don't look any better. Or if it's not a set piece, the movie will look just as good or worse than an episode of the anime, which boggles my mind. I don't understand why both of these movies just look like an episode of the TV show. You would think that they would have the budget to make it look much nicer. I'm curious as to how much an episode costs to produce and then how much this movie cost. Because they have to be pretty similar. And I know you've seen, or I think we talked about this, but think of the way that Naruto, the first series, think of the way that show looks. Now think of how the first Naruto movie looks. The first Naruto movie looks so much better than any of the TV shows. Like at 100% of its runtime, it looks way better than the TV show.
Yeah, you get that nicer, cleaner now. I mean, it's just like when you look at like the Rugrats TV show versus the movie. It's like when you go to the movie,
exactly.
The first SpongeBob movie, it's like, whoa, it's like you have shading now. It's like something as simple as that.
And then for whatever reason, they just refuse to do that with this movie. This movie and the previous movie. I don't understand why they just don't make it look better. It just looks like an episode of the TV show and it's so annoying. There are definitely fights where you see where it's like, okay, they amped up the budget here. But then, with the exception of the final fight, I feel like the other fights look just as good as, say, what's the most visually, what's the best animated fight in My Hero so far?
I'd probably say the final one where
in Endeavor versus that one.
Oh no, I guess that wasn't the most recent one. I would say like the Deku versus
Bakugo.
I forgot his name. Yeah, where he has like the little girl on his back the whole time.
Deku versus what's his name?
Mr.
Overhaul.
Yeah, Overhaul. There you go.
Yeah, Deku versus Overhaul. Okay, yeah, so that's one of the best ones. And man, I wouldn't even say that some of the fights in this movie even get close to that to being animated as well as that. I just don't understand why they can't make this. Why they can't make these movies look better.
That made me really curious to find out more about the production, because anime is typically done like it's just like as stingy as possible. Like they want to save as much money as possible, but usually I would imagine they usually try to, like, the movies are when they're allowed to, get more creative and not worry as much about the budget, because it's the movie. You expect them to go more all out, but it's kind of weird to hear that it's still keeping itself restrained, except when it like really has to, I guess, which is Hopefully the Demon Slayer movie isn't like that.
There are so. What? I'm sorry.
No, hopefully the Demon Slayer movie isn't like that, but the show by itself already, I feel, has really nice production.
Yeah, the show already looks really nice, so I wouldn't be surprised if if Mugen Train looks really, really nice. But yeah, as far as the movie goes, there's a new villain that's introduced that's very similar to All for One. His name is Nine, and I'm sure you can guess why his name is Nine.
Can you guess?
He did something 9 times. He's a cat. He has 9 lives. That's my guess.
Jason is like 10% of the way there.
So you mean I need 90 more percent to get there?
Yeah.
On theme? Okay, good.
Yeah. So in the first movie, I feel like none of class A1? 1A?
Yeah, 1A.
Class 1A doesn't really have anything to do. That movie is very much, this movie is about Deku and All Might, while this movie does utilize all the heroes, and it's like, oh, finally, they're being useful for once. And it's really, really cool to see them all come together. Since it takes place in the future, they have not controlled their powers, but they have realized the...
So, how long is this time jump? Like, it doesn't sound... I mean, it sounds significant, but not like, oh, they're adults at this point.
Yeah, so they're still in school.
Do they still look the same? Do they actually look aged up a little?
They look the same.
Oh.
Yeah. I guess in that case, I won't spoil... Well, I guess it's not a spoil since it's public information. But there is a third movie. So apparently this movie was supposed to be the final movie. They weren't going to make any movies after this because of the way that this movie sort of sets up the future of the series. Because apparently some of the ideas that were used in this movie were going to be used for the finale of the series itself.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah. So while I don't think the first movie is considered canon, this movie will be considered canon.
Wait, it's not considered canon?
I mean, I wouldn't consider the first movie canon. I mean, chronologically, yeah, it's canonical, but it's like, it's almost like a whatever movie. This movie could not exist. Yeah, this movie could have not been made, and like nothing would have changed. I feel like this movie does have some stuff where it will change. I'm gonna be curious to see how they incorporate this into the manga. And so, like I said, originally this movie was supposed to be the final movie, but they have confirmed a third movie, and they did show one picture of, who is it? Bakugo, Deku, and Todoroki in super awesome black suits. So I'm curious to see how that movie will then be integrated into the future of the series, or if that movie is just going to be like, okay, this is the last movie, and this is the very, very end of My Hero as it stands. Because, like I said, I think Heroes Rising was supposed to technically be the series finale of the manga, but I don't know, money talks. So I'm sure they saw how much money this movie made in Japan and said, oh, you know what? Let's make another one.
That's good to hear.
Yeah. But like I said, the movie is really good. I like the story of this one a little bit better. It's the heroes or Class 1A actually having to be heroes on like a small island that then gets attacked by some new villains. And yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed the movie, especially the ending. Like I said, the final fight is animated beautifully. I did get emotional, but that just might have been because of my state of mind. And
well,
yeah.
If you got emotional, I can only imagine how I'll get.
I want to hear your reaction, because especially the first movie is almost like filler, while this movie actually feels important to the series.
And I know you've mentioned to me before that it's on Amazon, but is it like Amazon Prime just free to stream, or is it like Amazon like $3 or $4 to rent it or something like that?
So I think the first movie is like $3 or $4 to rent it, but the second one, I believe you can see it for free if you do a trial of Stars. So, I mean, that's the way that I saw it.
Interesting.
So, I canceled my Stars subscription like immediately right afterwards, so I don't have to worry about that. So,
I have to do that as well.
Yeah, that was My Hero Academia Heroes Rising. Very good. 8 out of 10. If that final fight wasn't as cool as it was, 6 out of 10. Maybe even 5 out of 10. That's how much that final fight elevated that movie.
Endings are really important. They could definitely make or break a whole movie.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that'll do it for Heroes Rising. What is Niza?
So Niza, which apparently is pronounced Nisha.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, on I want to say Saturday. It was like the weekend before I had to go back to work. So, like we were like on our little holiday break. And I just wanted the night to keep going because, I just wanted to just stay in nice restful vacation mode. I think it was already like midnight at that point. And I somehow ended up watching Rango. And yeah, I enjoyed it. It was cool. But then after that, I was still on Netflix and I saw this movie Nisha that I've heard about because, I follow a lot of like animation Twitter accounts, so I'm aware of like the big movies from other countries as well. But this one kind of stood out to me just because it's a CG film, and while it does have kind of like a Pixar Disney art style, and if you look at some of the characters, like some of those could literally be in some of those other movies and you wouldn't bat an eye. The way it was animated, because it's a much more action-oriented movie, which Pixar and Disney don't really focus on. Like, sometimes they have some action set pieces, but it's never really combat-centric. And this one is all about that. And it just looked like, I just remember thinking like, whoa, this looks cool. And I saw that it was on there and I ended up watching it. And yeah, it was cool. Like, for one thing, like, this is like, apparently like the first Chinese animated film to ever be in IMAX, and it was actually like a really, really big hit over there because it follows one of the story of Nisha and their folklore. It's like loosely adapted, I guess, the way Disney would adapt any other folklore for that matter. But yeah, like in a nutshell, like it revolves around something called the Chaos Pearl. And it's like this like demonic entity that like if not controlled, like can destroy the world, the usual stuff. But this, like, I guess, I don't know what to call them, this, like, super deity, senses to, like, I guess, sub-deities to try and contain it. They're kind of unable to, so the super deity has to step in, and he splits the Chaos Pearl into the demon orb and the spirit orb. Pretty much, like, it's yin and it's yin and it's yang. And he puts a curse on the demon orb that, like, 3 years from now, like, this bolt of, like, divine lightning is gonna strike it and like completely eviscerate it. I don't know why it had to be 3 years from now and why he couldn't just do it then and there, but maybe there's just, something else that isn't explained to Western audience because I watched it subtitled. Well, actually, I can't really say that. I watched like 50% of the movie dubbed and then I watched the later half subbed. I don't know how I made it to 50% or how I made it halfway through watching it dubbed when the dub was, I would say it's terrible. It's like, like the movie, like, it's an action comedy, but it kind of like the way Coco or any Pixar film is a blank comedy. Like, it has humor, but it has like a lot of heart and it has action and some heavy moments as well. There's like a lot of humor sprinkled throughout, but the English dub is just so over the top. Like, the character voice, it feels like they make it feel like I'm watching like a film made for like very, very young children, because usually for very, very young children, you want the characters to be very over the top and exaggerated in the way they talk, just to keep them entertained. But this one, like, yeah, the Chinese dub, like, while you do have some eccentricness to a lot of the voice acting, it isn't as played up as much. And you could, I don't know, and I feel like just the deliveries, obviously I don't understand Mandarin, but the deliveries felt a lot more genuine. Like, I don't know, it just felt better. On top of the fact that the dubbing was, like, animated for the Mandarin version versus the English version, so that obviously helps. And, it lends to its authenticity. If I can watch something, I tend to lean more towards, if a film takes place, like, this is, like, obviously set in China, like, I would rather watch it in subtitled anyway. I just want to check out the dub just out of curiosity, just like for greater immersion. It just kind of takes me out a little bit sometimes when, like, I'll watch like a movie set in Tokyo, but everyone's speaking English, and in some cases you might even get a character that is from America go to Japan, but they're also speaking English, but everyone else is, supposedly speaking Japanese, even though they're speaking English. But you also get that in a lot of anime where everyone's speaking like Japanese, and then they go to America and like literally everyone speaks Japanese. And you're like, yeah, that's not how it works. But, it is what it is. Like, Space Brothers comes to mind, where they go to Austin for, like, a good portion of the show. And literally everyone is, like, fluent in Japanese, which is kind of funny. Like, but anyway, yeah, watch the sub if you watch it. And, yeah, so that's the plot. And where this movie, like, really, like, shines, I guess I would say is in its, like, the essence of its plot. Like, it just has a lot of heart. Like, I love that, like, after, the demon orb, the Chaos Pearl was split into the demon orb and the spirit orb, you could kind of guess that, oh, the demon orb is the bad side, the spirit orb is the good side. So they were gonna actually reincarnate the spirit orb, just have, like, the good parts of it reincarnated in a newborn child of, like, the king and queen of this land over here. I forgot the name of it. But essentially during like the ritual where the mom was about to give birth, the villain actually ends up switching the spirit orb for the demon pearl, for the demon orb. And as you would imagine, so now like this child is born with the demon orb inside, and he's like the embodiment of chaos, and they have to try to control him, and he ends up like becoming ostracized. It's pretty much like if you watch Naruto or...
I was about to say, this sounds exactly like Naruto.
Yeah, it's pretty much like, it kind of follows that. But in I guess in the opposite of Naruto, like he actually has his parents that love him and still try to gear him in the right direction, but he just knows he doesn't belong. Like he knows something is up. Because like in Naruto's case, like he was just like a normal kid for the most part in the beginning. Like it's not like his powers were always going out of control. People just knew that he has the nine-tailed fox inside of him, so they were afraid of him for that. This kid, literally from birth, like, is already, like, causing havoc all over the place, like, blowing up buildings, nearly killing people, and stuff like that they had to, like, so they have a right to be afraid of him. They see him as a monster, and, you know, he's still, like, a little kid, so, like, he doesn't really quite understand. He hates that everyone hates him. He hates that he has this uncontrollable rage, and they end up telling him that, oh, don't worry, like you're just trying to learn your powers, you're actually the spirit orb. And you know, they try to raise him that way, and it kind of works, but obviously since the villain has a spirit orb, they actually end up reincarnating a newborn dragon with the spirit orb to use that child for their evil agenda, because in this universe the dragons are for the most part enslaved as jailers. Like they're meant to hold back like the titans or like the very powerful evil deity that if are released will wipe out everything. So the dragons in a way are kind of trapped there because they can never go out, otherwise those monsters will be released. So they want to use this reincarnated spirit orb dragon child to try and I guess like save the day up there so that they can win the favor with the main god and maybe replace the dragons or like just get their freedom. And that obviously creates some conflict because now you have you still have the 3-year countdown that's coming up, so the parents know this and they want to do what they can to try to stop it so that, you know, their son doesn't die. It's still their son. So you have that going on. You have the conflict with the spirit orb. Like, you know, he is obviously extremely good in nature, but he's been raised by the villain, so he also has that internal conflict. And then you get to the action. Like, I won't spoil anything more beyond that. I mean, that's not really spoiler, but I won't dive any deeper because I think it's worth watching at that point. But the action and everything is just animated in such a cool way. Like, just in a way that I don't really feel I've seen CG get animated enough. I mean, Into the Spider-Verse, like, is an amazingly animated film that has its own very unique style that I ended up watching, like, literally 2 days ago. Just kind of unintentionally. I just wanted to watch, like, something in the opening credits and ended up just watching the whole thing. That makes it, like, the 10th or 11th time that I've watched that film. And it still gets to me, but it still bothers me that he spray paints his whole suit and somehow the fumes or the suit doesn't become like a, I don't know, stiff mess.
I mean, it's not the whole suit, but it definitely is the mask.
He spray paints the whole suit except for like the edges of the hands and feet. That's literally it. And then he just spray paints like another spider symbol on it. But then, I don't know. I like to, I mean, obviously it doesn't kill him. So I just imagine, alright, I guess it must be some special spray. But I was paying attention specifically to that.
In a movie about a kid getting bit by a radioactive spider, concern is the paint fumes of all things.
Yeah, it's just something that like feels like kind of overlooked. Like obviously, like I am very much in the mindset of if it works in universe, then obviously it's accounted for. So like the only reason like I don't like it doesn't kill me is because like I just assume like alright, it's accounted for because it all works out. It's kind of the whole reason why like anytime there's like these theories or you know like fan discourse on like, oh, if Sonic were real or whatever, then he would like break his legs because if you run that fast, it just wouldn't work or whatever. Like, well, like Sonic can run that fast because he doesn't break his legs. So clearly he doesn't have.
You mean to tell me there's an actual discourse around, gee, your legs can't form a figure eight like that in real life? Really? Like that's a thing.
It's the internet. It's about everything. There's like discourse about like, oh, like Godzilla would actually collapse under his own weight. It's like, no, because, like, you're assuming that he has, like, the same kind of, like, skeletal structure that we know about. Like, he's obviously a fictional creature, so whatever he has keeps him up. So you kind of have to, like, flip it around.
Am I just, like, not on the right parts of the internet? Is there a discourse somewhere about how warping through a pipe doesn't make sense? Like, is Nintendo's world just accepted as is, but no one else's is? Is that
how
does
sure
Donkey Kong tie his tie? Like, are those things that come up? Like,
I'm sure like they like stole that clothing from like an airplane wreck or something.
But it says DK on it. Like, how do you get that custom stitch? Like, come on.
He named himself DK after it.
That's the name origin. No wonder Nintendo won the lawsuit against Universal and King Kong. Makes sense.
Yeah, but anyway, like ignoring that stuff, like Spider-Verse has its own art style, but I had never seen like I guess such a high energy, high impact like combat. Just anime is so cool. It was just really cool. It was just visually awesome just to watch it in the same kind of like Pixar, Disney CG art style, because you just don't really see that. And I think for that alone, it's like worth checking out if you enjoy seeing that kind of action. Sometimes the humor can get a little on the juvenile side, like there are some fart jokes, but I don't know, but like everything else, like the power level of like the characters in this movie is like all over the place. Like you almost never really know how powerful some people are. Like some people that you think might be like not as tough end up being a lot tougher. There's like a ogre that they're chasing for a while that looks like it's just going to be a comedic relief, like bumbling, like, I don't know, filler evil dude. But he ends up being like this powerful bubble ogre that literally shoots bubbles that if they touch you, they turn you into like stone and you become like immobile. So like he suddenly becomes like this big threat, and it's like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to be like another like mini set piece fight or something. But yeah, it's interesting. It's very different. Like it's definitely made me more interested in checking out other Chinese animated films. Like as of now, I think there is a sequel for this film. Like I don't think it's a direct sequel to this, but it's set in the same universe. I don't think that's been released, and if it has, I don't think it's been released in the US. The only other Chinese film that I know of that has been released that I'm gonna check out now is called White Snake, which I think is made by the same studio, because the character design and the action, at least on the trailers, looks, you know, like it's cut from the same cloth. But yeah, need to check that out. Just definitely, it's just nice seeing like there are more and more like studios coming out that are just producing like really great quality stuff, so that, you know, it's not just Disney or Pixar. Like I like that Sony has been like stepping their game up even before Spider-Verse. Like say what you will about the Transylvania series, like the way that film is animated is probably one of like my favorite ways that films are animated, because it's literally animated like a rubber hose cartoon. Like it's just so visually interesting to look at the characters like squash and stretch and like move around all zany in CG. Like I think before that, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, like also by Sony, like started animating that way, but Hotel Transylvania like really pushed it, and I don't know, it's just really awesome. But it's cool to see like just more studios, especially all over the world, like kind of catch up, and you could even say like and surpass other studios like in some instances. Like I said, the action I think is really, really great here. But
to that point, I don't know if you guys know, Studio Ghibli's first CG movie will be on HBO Max the first weekend of February.
Yep, February 5th, Earwig and the Witch.
Yep. I'm sure we're going to end up talking about it afterwards.
Yeah, definitely watching that. It looks, I mean, art style, like it looks like they definitely took like, you know, the 2D drawings and adapted them to CG. But
yeah,
I am hoping it doesn't, because I mean, Ghibli films, like they have like a lot of like scenes where it's almost like kind of breathtaking how beautiful it looks in 2D. Like they're sweeping landscapes, a lot of even their action or like dramatic scenes, but
they look like paintings often.
Yeah, I hope that isn't lost in the CG in the transition to CG. It looks nice and clean, but I guess only
at what cost?
There's that movie.
It's clean at what cost? Yeah.
I mean, besides that movie, another movie that's coming out in February that I'm definitely checking out is Lupin the First.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
I didn't watch the series, but I did watch, because Ghibli.
I think Lupin the Third.
Yeah, Lupin the Third, the First. It's just something like that. But oh yeah, Lupin the Third is a series. Like I know that series is like really, really old, and it even had a series that came out recently-ish. And by recently-ish, I mean like within the last decade. But I never watched any of those. I just knew of his existence. All I've seen about Lupin is the movie directed by Ghibli, of course. And that one's on Netflix. At least it should be. At least that's where I saw it. Maybe it's gone already. And if it is, it'll probably be on HBO Max, so that's where the Ghibli stuff is. But it's like The Count of Castle Cagliostro or something like that. And I really, really like that film. It made me a fan of like the character. So after seeing like the trailer for that new Lupin movie, it looks really cool. It looks like they literally took the animation and the characters and translated them really well in CG, and the action looks super awesome. Like I really want to see that movie, but just torn between watching it digitally and then hoping to get like a Blu-ray copy. But we'll see. I don't mind supporting it, like just checking it out digitally, and if I really like it, buying the Blu-ray later, just because it won't be available first. So, you know, digital usually available before the physical. But yeah, that's Nisha.
Cool. And I think with that, there's nothing else on the docket unless you got something, Jason.
I could bookend our conversation about some of our listener metrics real quick if you're curious.
Yeah, sure.
34 countries. 34 countries.
Okay.
Including shout out to our one listener in Chechnya, and another listener in Panama, and also to our listener who really enjoys Bing Crosby. So Spotify gets creepy with his metrics. That's only Spotify, by the way. Other site, there may be other people from other countries through other means, but that's Spotify. So now we can conclude.
All right, cool. And that'll do it for this episode of Quarantine Chronicles. Little lighter on the topics, but it's the beginning of the year. We're still recharging from last year's debauchery. And next week we will have a new episode of Random Nintendo that I should be on. I missed last week. Scheduling's so hard nowadays.
And we missed you.
Thank you. I did listen to the episode. There was one thing that you guys brought up. Like you asked a question of like what? Oh, the carts. The cart question.
Oh yeah, your favorite kart racing game.
Oh, no, not that one. It was like what series? I think you asked like what series would get a good kart racer out of it or something like that.
We talked about spin-offs, and that led to him saying, Angel saying, Rhythm Heaven Racers.
Rhythm Heaven, yeah. I think I could have sworn that you asked him like.
I think we have like what series or what like game franchise like would get a good spin-off or like what kind of
spin-off. Yeah, and I think he ran in the kart direction with it because we were talking about.
Oh, okay, racing. I see.
Yeah,
gotcha. Okay, never mind.
What
was your answer to the question? It sounded like you.
I was gonna say like Marvel just in general, like Marvel characters in like a kart racing.
That never ever crossed my mind. Like DC or Marvel having like their own like kart racer because they've had fighting games, I guess. Marvel vs. Capcom and
they've had
Justice, but
they've had action RPGs.
It'd be kind of funny to see them branch out into like a DC party game, or like a Marvel party game, or a kart racer, or
and
like
they
sport. Like even though like a sports franchise, that could be hilarious to see like Gotham Sluggers or something.
And they could leverage what's the animated series they're doing on Disney Plus now, which is like the other story, like the What If Marvel or whatever. So they could leverage. They could do like What If Marvel kart racers, and it like excuses the weirdness of it instantly.
Yeah,
yeah.
Well, anyways. You'll have a new episode of Random Nintendo next week. You can follow us on Twitter. We are at Random Nintendo. You can follow us individually on Twitter. I am KV Ngomi. Jason is JSR7. Angel is Wyro_O. WEIRO_O.
Yep. Wyro.
Yep.
WEIRO.
You can follow us on any of your favorite podcast platforms. Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Whatever. I don't have the list in front of me, so I can't.
iHeartRadio,
Pandora,
possibly Amazon. They have podcasts. I don't know if we're there.
Oh, they have podcasts now. Oh,
they do.
Look into that. Let's expand our wings a little bit.
I will.
On YouTube, we are Random Nintendo.com, and I think that's going to do it for the housekeeping. Am I right there, Jason?
I think so. Yeah. That should be it.
And with that, we will leave you with Jason's final word.
I'm going to do a twofer. 1, shout out to our one listener in Romania. And 2, what if Marvel Kart Racers? Let's make it happen.